Unaware his pregnant wife was the secret CEO paying his parents' salaries. He dragged her out of a public dinner like trash on Christmas Day. What happened? When his mother opened the eviction notice left them spending new years on the street. He didn't just humiliate his pregnant wife at a public Christmas. Dinner Marcus Hart wrapped his fingers around Elena's wrist, yanked her out of her chair while 73 guests watched in horror, and dragged her across the decorated floor beneath the Christmas wreath and glowing lights, all while his mother, Linda, laughed from her seat and his father, Henry, nodded in approval beside the woman in the green dress who'd been whispering poison in their ears all night. What none of them knew not Marcus, whose rage twisted his face as he pulled his visibly pregnant wife like she was trash. Not his parents who worked night shifts at the packaging plant, not Sophie. The mistress in green who sipped her wine and smiled. Was that the pregnant woman crying out in pain and humiliation was Elena Ward, the secret CEO of the very company that signed their paychecks, approved their benefits, and paid the rent on Linda and Henry's apartment, the same woman whose signature appeared on every bonus they bragged about, every medical coverage that saved Henry's life, and every payroll deposit that let Marcus's parents sleep at night. They saw a jobless, weak, pregnant wife who contributed nothing. But when Marcus's mother opened the eviction notice that arrived 3 days after Christmas, when the termination letters hit their mailboxes on December 30th, and when Marcus himself found divorce papers clipped to an internal investigation file, exposing every dollar he'd misused and every lie he'd told, the Hart family spent New Year's Eve not celebrating around a table with wine and laughter, but standing on a frozen street with trash bags, wondering how the pregnant woman they destroyed in front of Christmas decorations and strangers, cameras had just made them homeless. But what Marcus never saw coming as he dragged his pregnant wife past that laptop on the table, the one she'd been working on before he grabbed her, wasn't just the eviction or the terminations. It was the video, the one the guests recorded, the one that reached Elena's HR department within 2 hours, and the one that tied the sobbing pregnant woman in the cream dress to the CEO whose name appeared on every document Marcus had ignored. And the question that haunted him as he stood in the cold on New Year's, watching his mother cry and his father rage, wasn't just, how did she do this? It was far more terrifying. If his pregnant wife had this much power all along, what else had she been hiding? And what's coming next that will destroy what's left? 3 hours before Marcus dragged Elena out of that restaurant, she sat in her top-floor office at Ward Industries, the December sun casting long shadows across her desk, signing the very documents that would end everything. Her assistant, Clara Martinez, a sharp-eyed woman who'd worked beside Elena for 6 years, stood by the window holding a folder. The Christmas bonuses are ready, Clara said quietly, including Linda and Henry Hart's. They'll each receive $3,000 tomorrow morning. Elena's pen paused over the signature line. Her hand moved to her belly, now showing at 5 months the small curve visible beneath her blouse. The baby kicked. She felt it flutter against her palm like a question she couldn't answer. Process them, Elena whispered. Clara didn't move. Elena, she said, using her first name the way she only did when they were alone. You don't have to keep doing this. They don't even know who you are. Linda called you a leech last week at the plant. Henry told the floor supervisor that Marcus made a mistake marrying someone so useless. The words should have hurt. They didn't anymore. Elena had heard worse. She'd heard it last Sunday at Marcus's parents' house when Linda said, I don't know what you do all day, but whatever it is, it's not enough. She'd heard it 2 weeks ago when Henry muttered, She's lucky Marcus keeps her. What they didn't know was that Elena Ward and Elena Hart were the same person. At work, she was Ward, the CEO who'd built this company from her late father's failing factory into a multi-million-dollar operation. At home, she was Hart, the quiet wife who Marcus introduced as someone who does a little online work. Nothing serious. She'd kept the secret for 3 years of marriage because Marcus had once told her. Early in their relationship, "I don't think I could handle being with a woman more successful than me. My ego's too fragile for that." She'd laughed. He'd laughed. But she'd heard the truth underneath. So when they married, she'd kept her maiden name at work, kept her office life separate, and let Marcus believe she was just doing freelance consulting from home. She told herself it was love, that she was protecting him, that once they were stronger, once he was more secure, she'd tell him everything. But 3 years later, he still didn't ask what she did all day. He just assumed she did nothing. Elena signed the bonus approval and set down her pen. "There's something else," Clara said, and her voice dropped. "Jonas in internal investigations flagged something. Marcus's department has unusual expense reports. Hotel rooms. Dinners for two. All charged to the company card. All while he was supposedly at regional training sessions." Elena's chest tightened. She already knew. She'd known for 2 months. She'd seen the receipts herself when Jonas first brought them to her attention. She'd seen the name on the hotel registry, Marcus Hart and Sophie Turner. She'd seen the photograph someone had quietly left on her desk, taken in the parking lot of a restaurant she'd never been to, showing Marcus with his hand on Sophie's back, his face close to hers, smiling in a way he hadn't smiled at Elena in over a year. "I'll handle it after the holidays," Elena said. Her voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. Clara's face softened. "You're going to see them tonight, aren't you? At the Christmas dinner." Elena nodded. Marcus had insisted. "My parents want to celebrate together," he'd said that morning. "They said it wouldn't be Christmas without family. Wear something nice." She'd agreed because part of her still wanted to believe that family meant something, that the people you loved wouldn't destroy you in public, that the man who'd promised to protect her wouldn't hurt her in front of strangers. She didn't know yet that she was wrong. She didn't know that in 3 hours Marcus would grab her wrist so hard it would leave bruises, that he'd drag her across a restaurant floor while his parents watched and smiled, that Sophie would be there, sitting in the corner, watching the humiliation she'd helped design. Elena stood, slipping off her blazer and reaching for the soft cardigan she kept on the back of her chair. She changed her shoes, pulled her hair into a simple ponytail. The transformation was small but complete. CEO to wife. Powerful to invisible. She picked up her purse, and as she walked toward the elevator, Clara called after her. "Elena," she said, "if something happens tonight, if they push too far, don't wait. Please don't wait." Elena turned back, and for just a second, Clara saw something flicker in her eyes. Not sadness. Not fear. Something colder, sharper. "I won't," Elena said. And then the elevator doors closed, and she was gone. The restaurant smelled like roasted garlic and pine from the Christmas wreaths hanging on every wall. Soft jazz played over the speakers. Families laughed. Children pointed at the decorations. It should have felt warm. Instead, Elena felt cold the moment she walked through the door and saw Linda and Henry already seated at the long table near the center of the room, their faces set in that familiar expression of judgment. Marcus walked ahead of her without holding her hand. He didn't pull out her chair. He sat down, checked his phone, and barely looked at her as she lowered herself carefully into the seat, one hand on her belly. "There she is," Linda said loudly, her voice cutting through the gentle hum of conversation around them. "We thought maybe you got lost. Or were you busy doing your important online work?" A few heads turned at nearby tables. Elena forced a small smile. Traffic was heavy. Henry snorted. "Traffic, right." He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "You know, Linda and I worked double shifts this week. Overtime. Real work. The kind that makes you tired." Linda nodded, her eyes sharp. "Some people don't understand what real contribution looks like." Elena's fingers tightened around her napkin under the table. She'd approved their overtime herself. She'd signed the pay increase that gave them holiday bonuses. She'd personally ensured their health insurance covered Henry's medications when his heart, Condition flared up last winter. They had no idea. Marcus scrolled through his phone, his jaw tight. He hadn't said a word to defend her. Not one. A waitress approached, the same kind-eyed woman named Mira who'd served them before. She set down water glasses and smiled gently at Elena, her gaze lingering on the small curve of her belly. "Congratulations," Mira said softly. Linda's head snapped up. "Congratulations for what?" Mira blinked, confused. "The baby." "I just thought—" "Oh, that," Linda interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. "Yes, well, let's hope she can manage motherhood better than she manages a career." The words landed like a slap. Mira's smile faltered. She glanced at Elena, saw the pain flicker across her face, and quickly stepped away. But Elena saw her pause near the kitchen, saw her pull out her phone, saw her watching. Marcus finally looked up. "Mom, maybe we should—" "Should what?" Linda leaned forward. "Tell the truth? Your father and I have been working ourselves to the bone to stay afloat, and you're stuck taking care of someone who contributes nothing. When are you going to wake up, Marcus?" Henry nodded. "A man needs a partner, not a dependent." Elena's throat tightened. Her baby kicked hard, as if sensing her distress. She put her hand over the spot, trying to breathe. That's when she saw her. Sophie, sitting 3 tables away in a green dress, a glass of white wine in her hand, watching everything with a small, satisfied smile. Their eyes met for just a second. Sophie didn't look away. She raised her glass slightly, like a toast. "Like a victory." Elena's heart pounded. Marcus saw her looking and followed her gaze. For a split second, panic flashed across his face. Then it hardened into something else. Anger, defense, guilt turning into rage. "Elena," he said, his voice low and sharp. "We need to talk. Outside, now." She didn't move. Marcus, his hand shot across the table and wrapped around her wrist. Hard, too hard. "I said now." He yanked. Not gently, not carefully. He pulled Elena out of her chair so hard her water glass tipped over, spilling across the white tablecloth. She gasped, her free hand instinctively going to her belly as he dragged her forward. Marcus stopped the baby, but he wasn't listening. His fingers dug into her wrist as he pulled her away from the table, her feet stumbling to keep up. Around them, conversation stopped. Forks paused mid-air. A child pointed. Marcus dragged her past the decorated tables, past the glowing Christmas tree, past Sophie, who watched with cold satisfaction, past strangers who pulled out their phones and started recording. Elena's voice broke. "Please, Marcus, you're hurting me," Linda's voice rang out behind them. She probably did something to deserve it. Henry laughed. Actually laughed. Elena felt her knees buckle as Marcus pulled harder, and she cried out, the sound raw and desperate. That's when Mira moved. The waitress stepped directly into Marcus's path, her phone already recording, her voice loud and clear. "Sir, you need to let her go. Right now." Marcus froze, his face twisted with rage. "Mind your business." "This is my business," Mira said firmly. "You're assaulting a pregnant woman in my restaurant." Other diners stood up. A man in a suit stepped closer. "Let her go, man. What's wrong with you?" Marcus's grip loosened for just a second, and Elena wrenched her arm free. She stumbled backward, tears streaming down her face, one hand cradling her belly, the other holding her bruised wrist. The entire restaurant stared. Phones pointed at her like weapons. She could see herself reflected in their screens, crying, humiliated, broken. Marcus's face flushed with embarrassment and rage. "Get out," he said, his voice shaking. "Just get out, Elena." She looked at him, really looked at him, at the man she'd loved enough to hide herself for, the man she'd protected, the man whose parents she'd hired and supported while they called her useless. Something inside her went quiet, cold, still. She turned and walked out of the restaurant, her head high despite the tears, despite the pain, despite the cameras. The cold December air hit her like a shock. She stood on the sidewalk, shaking, her breath coming in short gasps. Her phone buzzed in her purse. She pulled it out with trembling fingers. Clara's message glowed on the screen. The video is already online. It's spreading. HR has been notified. Elena, it's time. Do you want me to proceed? Elena looked back through the restaurant window. Marcus had sat back down. Linda was patting his shoulder. Henry was shaking his head like he was the victim. Sophie had moved to their table, sliding into the seat Elena had just left. Her seat, her family, her humiliation. Elena typed one word, yes. Then she added, everything. Tonight, within 2 hours, 3 envelopes were delivered. The first arrived at Linda and Henry Hart's apartment at 8:47 p.m. Linda opened it while still wearing her coat, still laughing about how dramatic Alana had been at dinner. Inside was a single document on company letterhead. Notice of lease termination. Property owner, Ward Industries. Tenant, Linda and Henry Hart. Effective date, December 28th. Reason, termination of employment. Linda's face went white. What is this? The second envelope arrived at Marcus's office email at 9:15 p.m., flagged urgent. Internal investigation findings. Employee Marcus Hart. Violations. Misuse of company funds. Fraudulent expense reporting. Inappropriate relationship with subordinate employee Sophie Turner. Recommendation. Immediate termination. Effective December 27th. Approved by E. Ward, CEO. Marcus stared at the screen, his hands shaking. E. Ward, the CEO he'd never met. The signature he'd seen on every memo. The name he'd never connected to the wife he'd just humiliated. The third envelope was hand-delivered to Henry and Linda's door at 10:33 p.m. Employment termination notice. Employee, Linda Hart. Henry Hart. Effective December 30th. Reason, company restructuring. Approved by Elena Ward, Chief Executive Officer. Linda read it 3 times before the words made sense. Elena Ward, Ward Industries. The company that employed them, the company that paid their rent. The CEO, her daughter-in-law. The useless woman with no job. Marcus's phone rang. His mother, screaming. Did you know? Did you know who she was? He didn't answer. He couldn't breathe. He opened his laptop with shaking hands and typed Elena Ward CEO into the search bar. Her face filled the screen. Professional photos. News articles. Elena Ward, 34, leads Ward Industries to record growth. CEO Elena Ward honored for employee welfare programs. There she was. His wife, the woman he'd dragged across a restaurant floor. The woman whose power he'd never seen because he'd never bothered to look. On New Year's Eve, Marcus stood outside his parents' old apartment building with 2 garbage bags of clothes. Linda sat on the curb, crying. Henry paced, his face red, yelling into his phone at lawyers who couldn't help them. The eviction had been legal. The terminations justified. Every document signed. Every rule followed. Sophie had disappeared the moment her own termination letter arrived. She'd blocked Marcus's number, moved out of her apartment, vanished. Marcus pulled up the video on his phone for the 100th time. Him dragging Elena, her crying, her holding her belly, strangers intervening. The view count was at 2 million. The comments were brutal. I hope she destroys him. That's his boss. He just assaulted his boss. She's pregnant and he dragged her like that? He deserves everything coming. At 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes before the new year, Marcus's phone buzzed one last time. A message from an unknown number. You asked me once why I never told you who I really was. The truth? I wanted to see if you loved me when you thought I was nothing. You showed me the answer tonight. The baby and I will be fine without you. We already were. Happy New Year, Marcus. Oh, and one more thing, Noah Jensen, the coworker who witnessed everything, has been promoted. He starts Monday as VP of Operations. People who stand up for what's right get rewarded in my company. People who destroy others get exactly what they deserve. Marcus looked up at the sky as fireworks exploded overhead. People cheered. Couples kissed. Families celebrated. and Marcus' heart stood in the cold with nothing. Finally understanding that the woman he treated like trash had been holding his entire world together. And now she'd let it go. Elena, 5 months pregnant, sat in her apartment across town with Clara beside her, watching the fireworks through the window. Her hand rested on her belly. The baby kicked, strong, alive, fighting. "Happy New Year," Clara whispered. Elena smiled. Not with bitterness. Not with anger. With relief. "Happy New Year," she said. And for the first time in 3 years, she meant it. If this story moved you, if Elena's strength inspired you, if you believe that people who stand silent while others are destroyed deserve to face the consequences, please subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story that reminds you of your worth. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. Your support means everything, and every subscriber helps us share more stories of people who chose themselves when the world told them they were nothing. Thank you for being here.